Hello everybody, welcome back to Arthanex's tutorial Let's Play of Twilight Struggle. I just want to make one quick note before we get started. When I reloaded the game, it replayed the AI's last turn. He still played, let's see, I think he played Formation Revolution last time. He still played that, however he put his influence in a slightly different place. Instead of putting it in Lebanon, he put it in Israel, which is interesting, but other than that, everything is obviously the same, since it only goes back one turn, I guess, when you reload the game. So, in this episode, the goal is going to be to, as I wait for the speech to finish, the goal is going to be to finish going over the rest of the basic rules. I'm going to turn that down. Alright, the goal is going to be to finish going over the basic rules and talk a little bit more about some of the strategy that you need to be aware of, specifically a few of the cards that you should be aware of, especially going into the early war. There's obviously a lot of cards in the deck, and more get added in the mid-war and the late war. And while you don't need to have, you should probably have a pretty good knowledge of the mid-war, you don't really need to have a super good knowledge of the late war cards, since oftentimes a lot of them won't even come up. But it is very important to have a good knowledge of the early war cards that you need to be aware of. So we'll start talking about that a little bit. But before we do that, let's just go ahead and continue our game here. So, as I said last time, I was thinking about doing the Korean War to get it out of the deck, and because I'm not super interested in putting 3 points in Japan right now. I mean, eventually I'm going to have to do it, but right now it seems like we're more focused on the Middle East. So, and possibly Europe. It would be nice to get control of France. France is one of those countries, one of those cards that you have to be aware of, but I'll talk about that in a little bit. I could also do defectors. I'd rather not do Fidel. We'll talk about Fidel a little bit later. All right, so let's go ahead and, he's got a 50-50 chance at this, and we'll just hope he rolls poorly. So we'll go ahead and roll it. Good. We got lucky. He needed to roll a 4, and he rolled a 2. So the Korean War failed. That's going to remove it from the game, and now we get 2 ops to place with it. So we got a couple of options here. We're at DEFCON 3. So we could potentially do a coup attempt. Again, we're more focused on these 3, since this is where the scoring cards are potentially going to get played this round. Let's see, if we look at the discard, no scoring cards have been played yet. I'm just refreshing my memory. And Marshall Plan has been played, but Warsaw Pact has not. Okay. So, one possible place to put this would be in Egypt. However, we don't want to put him in Egypt because there's an early war event called Nasser that will remove all of our influence from Egypt. So we could easily wind up wasting it if we put it in there. I'd like to get a little bit more control of the Middle East. I'd like to get control of Saudi Arabia and Israel. But it's going to be hard to get control of Israel and keep it. So I think what I'm going to do, there's also a Israeli war event. So if you want to have Israel, and you also want to have at least a couple of the countries next to Israel. So I think I'm going to go ahead and place 2 influence in Jordan here. It's a little bit harder for him to coup away from me because it is defense 2. And if he doesn't, it will help support Israel. It will potentially help me do realignment roles in Iraq, and it will give me access to Saudi Arabia. So I'm going to do that. So we'll talk a little bit more about realignment roles as we go. There was one thing that I should mention right now, talking again about the DEFCON track. So we've already talked about how the DEFCON track controls where you can do coup and realignment attempts based on this right here. No, we're at 3, so we can't do coup and alignment attempts in Asia or Europe. We've also talked about how it controls how many military operations you need. You need at least as many as where you are on the DEFCON track. But what we haven't talked about is this space down here, nuclear war. So nuclear war will obviously end the game. But unlike in some other games I played where nuclear war is lost for everybody, it doesn't work that way. Whoever starts the nuclear war loses. Whoever doesn't start the nuclear war wins. So now you're obviously thinking, well, why would you ever start a nuclear war? I mean, once you get down to DEFCON 2, you just stop doing coup attempts on battleground countries, right? And then you just don't have to worry about it. Well, it doesn't quite work that way. There are cards that are played that will allow your opponent to degrade the DEFCON track on your turn. And if you do that, then you automatically start a nuclear war. Because it was based on your card, you lose. So, let's see, he played Europe scoring, all right? That is fine. So Europe scoring is out of the deck. We are even in Europe, because we both have 2 battleground countries. We both have presence, but neither one of us has domination, all right? A little bit surprised by that. So, let's take a look at an example here. We look at Olympic Games. So if we play Olympic Games as an event when the DEFCON level is at 2, then the opponent has the option to boycott the Olympics and degrade the DEFCON 1 level. Now, even though it was his choice to boycott the Olympics, because the Olympic Games is my card, that would count as me starting the nuclear war, and I would lose. So you have to be really careful about playing cards that degrade the DEFCON level. And you have to be especially careful during the headline phase. So obviously, in theory, I would know that this would degrade the DEFCON level. I wouldn't play it if the DEFCON level was at 2. However, during the headline phase, we'll talk a little bit about this more during the next headline phase, but since we both play a card face down, if his card goes first and degrades the DEFCON level, even if we're at DEFCON 3, he plays a card that has a higher number that degrades the DEFCON level, and then my card gets resolved, then he can end the game in nuclear war, and I will still lose. Since I played this headline card, I am responsible for it, even if he's the one who gets the choice that ends the game. So it's a really important concept to grasp. It's not, in general, as long as you are thinking ahead, it's not too difficult to avoid losing the game by nuclear war. But you can fall into a trap occasionally. All right, so I'm going to keep working on the Middle East, especially since Europe scoring just got played. And I'm going to... I'd like to get this card back into circulation. So I'm going to place... How many more cards do I play? I play 2 more cards this round, yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and place influence with defectors. And we'll throw 2 influence in Saudi Arabia. Okay. Now, he's going to play Indo-Pakistani War, so he's going to try and he flipped Pakistan. He needed to roll a modified roll of 4 to 6, and he had -1, so he needed to roll a 5, but he rolled a 6, so that's kind of bad for me, because that means that he is dominating Asia now, and I'm going to have to do something about that. And I obviously can't coup Pakistan because we're at DEFCON level 3. But I only have 1 card to place this round. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the Space Race to get rid of Fidel. Now, sometimes there are cards that you don't want to play because they're too good for your opponent, or they don't have very much ops. So you don't want. I don't want to play this card because I don't want to give him a foothold over in Central America right now. It's a little bit too early. Now, obviously, this card is one of the cards I'm talking about that you need to be aware of as the U.S. player. I don't want to put any influence in Cuba before this card gets resolved, because if I do, all the influence in Cuba is going to be removed. There's a few countries like that where the U.S. wants to be really careful. Egypt, we talked about, Cuba, Romania, in fact, all of Eastern Europe before the Warsaw Pact card gets played. If that card gets played, he can remove all U.S. influence from 4 countries in Eastern Europe. So all of Eastern Europe is potentially problematic, but especially Romania, because there's a card that just does Romania. So Cuba, Egypt, Romania. I think those are the only cards that actually remove U.S. influence. There's also cards that gain him influence in specific places, but those are not quite as worrisome. There's a card like that for France. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead, since I don't want to play this card, I don't want to give him a foothold in Central America, I'm going to go ahead and use this for the space race. So how does the space race work? Well, space races allow you to get cards out of your hand that you don't want to play. So I don't want to play this, so what happens when you play a card for the space race is the card goes into the discard pile and nothing on it takes effect. None of this stuff is going to happen. I'm not going to get ops. The event's not going to happen. None of that's going to happen. Instead, I'm going to try and advance on the space race track. Now, the space race track doesn't do that much. It's not completely meaningless because you can get a fair number of victory points on it, and it has a couple of cool special abilities, especially this one. But it's not crucial to winning the game. In fact, it's pretty common to win the game and never do anything on the space race track, especially if you roll poorly. So the way this works is, in order to advance to the next spot, I have to roll a 1 to 3 down here, and I have to discard a card. I'm not sure what that 2 ops means, actually. I think it means I have to discard a card that's worth at least 2 ops, but I'm not sure. Anyway, so I have to discard a card that's worth at least 2 ops. I can't use a 1 ops card to try and advance on this part of the space race. But that's okay. Fidel's worth 2 ops. If I roll a 1 to 3, I succeed. If I roll a 4 to 6, I fail. But either way, the card gets discarded and I don't have to play it, which is kind of really the goal of using the space race. So we're going to go ahead and space race. We're going to try, and we failed, which is okay. So now it's the end of the round. So it shows us the current DEFCON level, our current military ops, and shows us if we lost any victory points. Neither player lost any victory points. Now we're going to draw back up to 8 cards. So the DEFCON level is going to increase 1 level at the end of every round. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, so the China card doesn't count as a card in my hand. So I drew 7 new cards. So I drew Middle East scoring. And he probably has Asia scoring. So now I need to pick a headline event. I also drew this one. This is the card, the bad card for France. So I might want to space race that one. Boy, my options. Let's see, I could headline NATO, but I'd actually kind of rather use it for ops. These are all bad events for me. So I think I'm just going to headline this. It's pretty bad, but you know, I'm probably going to play it as an event anyway. Yeah, so he headlined Asia scoring, which is obviously bad for me. Not surprised. Yeah, so he had 6 points. That coup, that Indo-Pakistani war was obviously really good for him. So now he's going to play. But the advancing in the space race got me 2 points back, so he's still only at 6. Like I said, the USSR has a pretty significant early game advantage in my experience. But the USA can hang around long enough, they usually make it back. Alright, so he played Eastern Europe Unrest. That lets me remove 3 influence. 3 ops card lets me remove 3 influence in Eastern Europe. So I'm obviously going to degrade his influence in the battleground countries. And then I'm going to pick 1 more to get rid of. I'm going to get rid of Yugoslavia. So now he could obviously just put the 3 influence right back if he wants to, because this is a 3 ops card, but he's probably going to use it for something else. We'll see. Alright, so he put 2 in Egypt and 1 in Saudi Arabia. Alright. So now I do have some good high ops cards, and we're obviously focusing on the Middle East this round. The card that gives him influence in Egypt hasn't been played yet, and I obviously need to do some military ops. The only 2 defense cards that he has are there. I think I'd like to get a coup back in Pakistan if I can. And since the Asia scoring card's already been played, I'm tempted to use this. And the next battleground coup will prevent me from coupping Asia again. So yeah, I'm going to let Asia go for a little bit, and we're going to do a coup attempt on Pakistan. Because it's this one, it's a 5, it's worth 5 ops. So... And he can't, that removes his ability to place influence over here, at least for a little while. I mean, he can place influence in Afghanistan because it's next to the USSR. That also takes care of all the military ops I need and prevents him from doing any coup attempts in Asia. Alright, so he played US Defend Mutual Defense Pact. That gives me 3 influence in Japan. It triggers the event, which is good for me. But it does give him 4 ops to use, obviously. It's not so good for me. So he's going to use them for influence. Interesting. He put 1 in Japan. That surprises me. That cost him 2. Or why he did that. Maybe he doesn't want me to have anything in Japan. Alright, let's go ahead. Let's go ahead and use this for influence. So we obviously are mostly concerned about the Middle East right now. So we'll go ahead and take Saudi Arabia. We now have 3 countries that are bordering Iraq. That makes it a really good realignment possibility. So maybe I'll go ahead and throw 2 in Iraq, and maybe I'll show you how realignment attempts work on the next turn. Since we have 3 of these. We have 3 of these. Well, we'll see what he does. Alright, so he's doing a power 1 coup. Alright. Probably he just did that for military ops. Alright, so I'm going to use the Olympic Games. Oh, right, I can't do realignment attempts. That prevents me from doing realignment attempts in the Middle East. Because since this got reduced to 2, now there's no coup or realignment attempts in the Middle East. Well, we can still do that next turn. In the meantime, let's see. I'm actually dominating the Middle East. I could play Middle East scoring right now. But I still have a lot of high influence cards in my hand. So maybe I'll play this for influence, and we'll try and increase my... I can either get control of Iraq or Israel with a 4 influence card like that. Getting control of Israel is a little bit risky since Arab-Israeli war has not yet been played. So getting control of Iraq can be risky too, because there's a mid-game event called Muslim Revolution that can remove all my influence there. Let's see. Currently, he'd have to roll if I take Israel, he'd have to roll a 6 on Arab-Israeli war in order to get it back for me, because he'd be at -2, because I'd be controlling Israel and Jordan. So I think I'm going to go ahead and place 4 influence and take Israel. And if he has Arab-Israeli war, which he probably does, he can try and play it, but he'll have to roll a 6. I will live with that. He can also try doing realignment attempts in Israel. Oh no, he can't because, of course. Alright, so he did special relationship. NATO's not in play, so that lets me place 1 influence on a country adjacent to the UK, so I'll finish off Canada. I could have put it in France, I suppose. Especially since I have this in my hand. But I wanted to finish off Canada, so if he draws NORAD, I'll actually get some use out of it. And the deck is about to get reshuffled. So NORAD will come back in. Okay. Alright, so we did that. I don't think I'm going to get a better chance to play Middle East scoring. So we'll play it now. And I'm going to get 4 points back. because I'm dominating the Middle East. I have 3 battleground countries. He has, so that's worth 8, and then I have to subtract his, because remember, it's a scale, so he has 3 and 1, which is Egypt. So we'll go ahead and do that. So that got me 4 points back, bringing us pretty close to even. He's still slightly ahead, largely as a result of his good age of scoring card. Now that I don't have any scoring cards in my hand, I can play this. Alright, so there's the Arab-Israeli war, so don't roll a 6. Okay, he rolled a 5. If he'd rolled a 6, it would have been really bad for me, but he only rolled a 5, which was not good enough, because he needed to get a 4, a modified result of a 4, and he's subtracting 2, because I control Israel and Jordan, so good. That's out of the way. So he has 1 more card to play, and I have 2. So I'm going to go ahead and use this one since I have no scoring cards in my hand. So we'll resolve the event first, and then I will go ahead and take back Japan and Pakistan. See what he does. He's space racing duck and cover, and he succeeded. And I'm in a space race. De Gaulle leads France. Now I just need to roll a 1 to 4, and I succeeded. So now I have this special ability, but I only have this as long as he doesn't get to this part of the track. Once he gets here, I will lose the special ability. You only have it while you're ahead. Okay?
So my country's purpose is to help us move out of the dark chamber.
So now we go back to DEFCON 3.
To find a way by which the mind
And so we drew 4 cards. We're still in the early war now, but the deck just got reshuffled, so all 3 of the scoring cards are going to go back in. And all of the events that didn't get removed from the game. So you can see 2 of his events and 3 of my events got played as events and got removed from the game. So the deck is a little bit better for him now because he still has more high-value events in it than I do. So that's a little bit unfortunate. On the other hand, I got the effect of both of these events, which were both really good. Alright, so we'll continue, and then we'll draw 2 cards that we've already seen. Special Relationship and Truman Doctrine. Okay, so I think I'm going to headline CIA Created, so I get to see what's in his hand this turn. And it's only a 1-value event. That gives me ops as if I played a 1 ops card. So I obviously want to play it as an event no matter what. Yeah, so let's go ahead and do CIA Created, see what he did. Alright, he headlined Warsaw Pact form, so that's going to get it out of the deck at least. Which is actually fine. So he's going to get to place... He could remove 1 influence in Austria. He's not going to do that. So he'll place 5 influence, no more than 2 in any one country in Eastern Europe. So he's going to control Hungary and Finland, which is fine. And then he has 1 more. Probably put it back in Yugoslavia, if I had to guess. Or maybe Poland. Yeah, he put it back in Yugoslavia. No surprise there. Alright. Oh, he didn't headline this, which is good. This is one of the big differences. So he's got Middle East scoring in his hand. That's obviously really important for me to know. That tells me that I need to focus on the Middle East this round. Again, because it's going to get scored. This is why CIA Created is pretty good in this situation. He also has 1 4-ops card. He's got the China card in his hand, too, which I already obviously know. So he has a lot of power in Asia, but he can't use the China card to coup. Too. And he's got Vietnam revolts. Got another Eastern European unrest. Interesting. And he's got Nasser. That's the Egypt card. So that prevents me from placing anything in Egypt, because if he plays that as an event, it'll all get removed. Okay. Alright, so now I get to place ops, and I'm going to show you how realignment rolls work. So the important thing to remember about realignment is that you can only ever lose influence from realignment. You can never gain influence. So we both have influence here, so we both have something to lose. Oftentimes you want to do realignment in places where you have nothing to lose, but your opponent does. But in this case, because I have such a big advantage here, +3 to a +1, I'm going to go ahead and do it here. Now, that doesn't necessarily, I mean, if he rolls a 6 and I roll a 1, I'm going to lose both of these influence, because that's going to be a modified 4 against a modified 7. I'll be down 3. So the way this works is we're both going to roll a die, and then we are going to add these modifiers. So I'm going to add 3 to my die. He's going to add 1 to his. And then whoever has less is going to remove the difference in influence. So let's just go ahead and do that. There you go. So he outrolled me by 1, but I added 3 to this for 6. He added 1 to that for 5. I beat him by 1. That removed an influence. That was not super effective. If we'd been even, he would have had to remove 2. But that just shows you how realignment rolls work. It's one way to get a lot of influence out of one ops. The other way is to do a coup. But, alright, so he's going to play the China card for influence. And he's going to put, he's going to take Iraq. Interesting. So that gives him +2 on Iraq. What country does he have adjacent to Iraq that he controls? Nothing. So I still outrolling him by 3 there. So this allow him to remove influence from Israel. I don't really want to do that. I think I'd like to do some more realignment rolls in Iraq, actually. Is Syria adjacent to Iraq? Doesn't look like it is. No, just these 4, and I have 3 of them. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and try it. So we're going to do realignment rolls. We're going to try this again. Yeah, +3, +1. So we'll roll. There we go. That's what I'm talking about. So that cost him all 5 of his influence in Iraq. And then we'll try and get rid of his influence in Saudi Arabia, too. Good. Got it. So that, unless he does a coup attempt, is going to prevent him. So he's probably going to coup Jordan now. But it's going to prevent him from placing any more influence anywhere over here because he has no influence to start with. Unless he starts working down from Afghanistan. Alright, so he's doing Red Scare Purge for influence. Put 3 over here. Put 3 in Taiwan. Interesting choice. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and place influence with 5-year plan. Take Iraq. And the other 2 will go ahead and throw in France. So let's see what he does. He obviously is going to have to play Middle East scoring this turn. Alright, he's going to do UN intervention for containment. He's going to do a coup attempt in Jordan. Oh, and he failed. That's lucky for me. Alright, so I believe I still have to do a coup attempt. Yeah. I want to, I'm going to try do a coup attempt in Libya. And I'll use this. Well, let's see. I could use this. No. That'd be too painful. That would, yeah. What I'd like to play this after. I want to get that out of the deck. But I want him to play Middle East scoring before I play that. Um, two per country. All right. Probably going to have to play this at some point, no matter what. Let's go ahead and do it. See what he removes. Alright, he removed influence from those two. Alright, I can live with that. Let's do a coup attempt in Libya. And we rolled a 1. That's too bad. Because we should have used the Olympic Games for that. But our hand is pretty bad at the moment. So the goal there was to get some, since obviously Middle East scoring was going to get played, the goal was obviously to get some military ops and hopefully get control of Libya. Alright, he played Vietnam revolts for influence. So he's getting a pretty good foothold in Africa. He can now place influence in France because he has influence in Algeria. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and retake these two. Resecure Europe. So he's got 2 more cards to play. One of them is obviously going to be Middle East scoring. We're still dominating the Middle East. So mainly we're looking to counter any moves he makes in the Middle East with his card, whatever it is. Oh, he did Eastern European unrest. Can I remove 2 from the same country? No, I can only move 1 from each. So I'll redo the 2 battleground countries, and I'll take 1 out of Finland. No, I won't. I'll do the 2 battleground countries, and I'll take the 1 back out of Yugoslavia. See what he does. Playing it for influence. Right, so I can't counter both of those. If I place influence there, that gives me domination of the Middle East back. It also gets him Romania and removes that card from the deck, which is fine. Alright, so now he has to play Middle East scoring. Which gives me 4 points since I'm dominating the Middle East. So that worked out well for me. It gives me 1, now 1 to the good, and I can space race Suez. Well, or I could just play it. I think I'm just going to play it to get it out of the deck. And then I will just counter that. Alright, and on to the next round. But I think that's going to do it. So you can see, as we move on to the mid-war here, all of the mid-war guards are going to get added to the deck. Now, that's not going to shuffle in the things that are discarded, but it is going to add a bunch of new cards to the deck. That includes, the things that it adds are Central American scoring, South America scoring, Africa scoring, Southeast Asia scoring. So the game board just got a lot bigger because we're not just focused on 3 places anymore. And it also added a bunch of cards, some of which are good for me, some of which are really good for him. We'll talk about more about those in the next episode as the game moves on. So the U.S. has escaped the early war with a slight lead. We're in a pretty good position. We've also got a slight lead in the space race. We're in a pretty good position. We are ahead in the Middle East. I would say we're a little behind in Asia. And we're a little ahead in Europe. Not super ahead, but a little ahead in the Middle East, a little ahead in Europe, and a little behind in Asia, and a little behind in Africa, which could be a problem since Africa scoring is coming into the deck. All right. And that's going to do it for this episode. I will see you guys next time. And until then, have a terrific day.